What do you do when the truth about your marriage comes wrapped inside your sister's baby shower gift, and you're the one who wrapped it? I grew up understanding my place in the family long before anyone ever said it directly, because you don't need the words spelled out for you. You just feel it in your bones over years of small moments. It's in the extra beat of pride in a parent's voice when they talk about one child and not the other, the way certain report cards get taped proudly to the fridge while others earn a passing glance before the conversation moves on. My sister Nora was always that favored one in our house, the golden version of a daughter our parents seemed almost built to celebrate. If Nora brought home an A, it became a whole conversation at dinner. If I brought home the same grade, I got a quick nod before the subject shifted right back to her. I spent most of my childhood as the quiet supporting character in a story that somehow always circled back to her, no matter what I did or how hard I tried. And still, despite everything, I never let that curdle into resentment toward Nora directly. It wasn't her fault our parents played favorites so openly. I convinced myself, the way you do when you're young and still hopeful, that adulthood would eventually balance the scales, that we'd grow into equals once we were both out from under our parents' roof. 2 nights ago, I learned exactly how wrong that belief was. My parents had invited my husband Sam and me over to celebrate Nora's pregnancy, something she and her husband Alex had wanted for a long time after months of trying. I went genuinely happy for her, pushing past the familiar tightness in my chest that shows up almost automatically whenever I'm around that house, a feeling I've had for so long I barely register it as unusual anymore. Sam came with me the way he had for 5 years now, the one constant in my life I trusted completely, the person who always seemed to understand exactly how complicated things were with my family, without me having to explain it every time. The dinner itself passed without incident, at least on the surface. My parents doted on Nora the way they always do, treating her pregnancy like some kind of landmark achievement no other woman had ever managed to pull off before her. I smiled through it, offered my congratulations, kept things pleasant and light, the way I've trained myself to do at every one of these gatherings over the years. It was on my way back from the bathroom afterward that everything changed in the span of about 30 seconds. Passing the kitchen, I caught my parents mid-conversation. Voices dropped low in that unmistakable tone people use specifically when they don't want to be overheard by someone else in the house. I should have just kept walking straight past, the way I probably would have on any other night. Instead, something in the tone made me stop dead in the hallway. My mother was saying, quietly but clearly, that they'd agreed never to bring up Nora's mistake around me. Confusion hit first, a split second of trying to figure out what mistake she could possibly mean, and then the actual meaning of her words landed like a physical slap across the face. Nora had slept with Sam, my husband. Months earlier, apparently, long enough ago that it had already become something my parents referred to casually as old news between themselves. My parents had known the entire time and chosen silence instead of telling me, protecting Nora's image over telling her own daughter the truth, dismissing the whole thing as a lapse in judgment that shouldn't be allowed to overshadow her now that she was finally expecting a baby of her own. I barely remember how I actually left that house that night. Some mumbled excuse about not feeling well, my keys in my hand, the car, driving with absolutely no destination in mind, just needing distance between myself and everything I'd just heard. My own parents had chosen her over me again, and this time the stakes weren't a grade or a birthday gift or a curfew. The stakes were my entire marriage. It felt like every quiet suspicion I'd ever had since childhood had just been confirmed all at once, in one overheard sentence in a kitchen doorway. For 2 full days, I barely spoke to Sam. He kept asking what was wrong, why I'd suddenly gone so cold and distant. And I genuinely couldn't answer him without picturing him with her, without feeling my stomach turn over completely. I didn't know who deserved to hear from me first. Whether it should be him demanding answers or my parents demanding accountability, or whether I even had the strength yet to face Nora at all. Then, somewhere around the 2-week mark, the initial shock finally burned off and something far colder and more deliberate took its place. I decided against confronting any of them with tears or shouting, the reaction they probably expected from me, and were likely already prepared to manage and smooth over. I wanted something that would actually land, something undeniable and public, something none of them could talk their way out of with a rehearsed family meeting and a group apology. So I went quiet instead. I let them keep believing I was still the same easy, compliant daughter who never made waves, while behind the scenes I quietly built a complete case against every single one of them. People get careless once they think they've already gotten away with something. The baby shower ended up giving me exactly the platform I needed, almost as if it had been designed for this purpose. My mother called days later, breezy and cheerful as always, completely unaware that I now knew everything, asking if I'd organize the event for Nora, since apparently that's simply my role in this family whenever something needs planning or handling. I agreed instantly, without a single hint of hesitation in my voice. A baby shower means a room full of witnesses, family, friends, in-laws, exactly the audience I needed for what I had planned. At night, once Sam was asleep beside me, I went through his phone, his laptop, even old cloud backups he'd clearly forgotten still existed somewhere. The first real discovery came in the form of a folder tucked under some unremarkable, forgettable name holding photo after photo of him and Nora together. Clearly not a single isolated mistake, but something that had been going on for a while. I kept digging over the following nights and found actual message threads between the two of them, discussing in detail exactly how careful they'd both been to keep everything hidden from me specifically. Worse still were the messages between my mother and Nora, coordinating the cover-up directly, reassuring each other back and forth that protecting Nora's reputation mattered far more than my right to know the truth about my own marriage. I saved absolutely everything I found, backed it up in 2 separate places just in case, and then I waited patiently for the right moment to use it. On the actual day of the shower, I played my part flawlessly from the moment I walked in. Supportive sister, dutiful daughter, the entire performance down to the smile I kept plastered on my face. My mother ran the whole event like she was staging a coronation, completely and blissfully unaware of what was quietly waiting in my bag the entire time. I mingled with relatives, laughed at small talk that meant nothing to me, helped arrange the growing pile of gifts on the table, all while carrying something considerably heavier than wrapping paper and ribbon. When the cake was finally cut and every eye in the room turned toward Nora, I stood up and told everyone I had something special for her, something that came from the heart. In a strange, twisted way, that part was actually true. The box itself was elaborate, deliberately so, built specifically to draw every eye in the room before she even lifted the lid. Expensive paper, an oversized bow, the works. Inside were printed photographs, chosen very specifically because they left absolutely no room for explanation or misinterpretation. I watched her expression shift in real time, delight collapsing into confusion, then into genuine horror, as she processed exactly what she was looking at in front of everyone she knew. Before anyone in the room could fully process what they were seeing, I revealed decorative curtains I'd arranged earlier that day, displaying the same images now enlarged, undeniable, laid out for the entire room to witness at once. There was no version of this story my parents could quietly manage or spin anymore, no room left for whispered kitchen conversations. I laid it all out clearly and calmly. The affair itself, the deliberate cover-up, months of being lied to directly while I sat smiling across dinner tables with people who had known everything the entire time. Alex stormed out mid-sentence, calling her a traitor at the top of his voice, his tone carrying exactly the same raw shock I'd felt weeks earlier standing frozen outside that kitchen doorway. My parents had absolutely nothing left to say, no defense left to offer for their favorite daughter this time, not with the evidence displayed for everyone present to see with their own eyes. Something in my chest finally loosened in that moment, something close to relief after weeks of carrying this alone, and I left the party without waiting around for a single apology from anyone. I heard the rest of what happened secondhand, from Nora's now former close friend who reached out to me days later, clearly shaken by everything she'd witnessed. The party apparently descended into an outright brawl not long after I walked out. Alex's parents unloaded on Nora with everything they had, furious and visibly disgusted, while my father tried weakly to shield her behind the fact of her pregnancy. Alex's father wasn't interested in holding back, and things escalated quickly until my father actually charged at him and ended up flat on the ground after taking a single punch. Alex's mother and my own mother got physically involved too, hair-pulling included, until other guests finally managed to pull them apart from each other. Nora herself walked away from the whole thing completely physically untouched, purely because of the pregnancy and nothing else. Sam avoided getting hit entirely by making himself as invisible as possible in the crowd the whole time. I filed for divorce almost immediately afterward and had every single one of his belongings waiting for him out on the front lawn before he even made it home that night. He didn't argue, didn't knock, didn't try to explain himself at the door. He simply collected his things in silence and left. Weeks passed after that without a single word of contact from my parents or from Nora. No apology, no attempt to reach out to me specifically, which honestly confirmed everything I'd already suspected about where I truly stood with all of them. Even public humiliation on that scale, played out in front of their entire extended family, apparently wasn't enough to make any of them reconsider how they'd actually treated me over the years. Then the story kept unfolding entirely on its own, almost as if it had a life independent of anything I'd started. Nora's former friend discovered, through her own investigation, that her own husband had also been sleeping with Nora this whole time. When she confronted him about it directly, he reportedly went straight to Nora's place afterward, apparently believing at the time that the baby might be his, and landed the exact punch Sam had managed to dodge back at the shower. Sam threatened to sue over it afterward, a detail I genuinely couldn't bring myself to care about at all. Alex filed for divorce shortly after that and moved out of their shared home entirely. My own divorce, meanwhile, closed out cleanly within about a month. No children involved, no drawn-out legal fight. Assets split evenly down the middle without much resistance from either side. Watching mine resolve so smoothly and quickly only made the ongoing mess surrounding Nora look considerably messier by comparison every time I heard another update. Sam, after taking that punch and dealing with the growing suspicion that the baby might not even be his to begin with, eventually moved out of Nora's place entirely as well, apparently unable to stomach the possibility that she might have done to him exactly what the two of them had once done to me. When the baby finally arrived months later, the DNA test that followed confirmed Sam wasn't the father after all. The child turned out to belong to the friend's husband instead, who was by that point also mid-divorce himself. Knowing Nora as well as I do, I honestly wouldn't be shocked if there were other candidates in the running who simply never got tested at all. At this point, the ongoing chaos surrounding her felt less like an active crisis and more like routine, expected behavior at this point. Still, to this day, nothing from my parents or from Nora directly. For a brief moment, I almost let myself give them the benefit of the doubt, assuming they were simply too buried under the consequences of their own choices to reach out to me. That wasn't sincere on my part, in case that needs clarifying for anyone reading this. I genuinely don't think they'd have reached out regardless of how much time passed. Eventually, Nora moved back in with our parents, alone now with the baby, since its actual biological father wanted no real part of either of them going forward. Alex's divorce wrapped up entirely in his favor in the end. No house, no support payments, no lingering financial ties of any kind. The friend's divorce closed out around roughly the same time. The physical fighting has stopped completely by now. The legal loose ends have mostly tied themselves off on their own, but some things don't fully settle no matter how much time passes. Not the memory of that exact room the moment the truth finally came out in front of everyone. And from what I still hear through the grapevine occasionally, not the mark still quietly visible on my father's pride, or the one Alex's mother apparently left permanently in my own mother's hairline that day. People sometimes ask me now whether I regret how I handled it, whether a quieter confrontation might have spared everyone the public spectacle, the punch, the hair pulling, the months of fallout that followed. I've thought about that question more than I'd like to admit, but every time I run it back, I land in the same place. A quiet conversation would have given them room to manage the narrative the way they always had, to soften it into something forgivable over time, the same way they'd already softened Nora's affair into a mere lapse in judgment before I ever found out. I needed something they couldn't spin, couldn't quietly negotiate around a dinner table a few months later. I needed a room full of witnesses who couldn't be talked out of what they'd seen with their own eyes. What surprised me most, honestly, wasn't the affair itself. Betrayal, as ugly as it is at least a known shape, something you can eventually name and grieve. What actually broke something in me was the conversation I overheard in that kitchen, the casual, practiced ease with which my parents had decided my pain simply didn't factor into the equation. They weren't debating whether to tell me. They'd already decided, calmly, as a settled fact, that protecting Nora's image outweighed my right to know the truth about my own life. That kind of quiet, decisive erasure is somehow harder to sit with than the affair itself. I've also had time to notice something else since all of this happened. Something almost darkly funny if I let myself see it that way. Every single person who tried to protect Nora's reputation that night ended up losing something anyway. My father lost a fight in front of extended family he'll never live down. My mother lost a literal chunk of her hair and, from what I hear, has quietly started looking into wigs. Nora lost her marriage, her friendship circle, and any illusion that our parents' protection could actually shield her from consequences forever. The only person in that entire story who walked away with anything resembling a clean outcome was me, and I didn't get there by waiting for them to finally treat me fairly. I got there by making sure the truth landed somewhere they couldn't quietly bury it. I don't know if Nora and I will ever speak again in any meaningful way. Part of me assumes not, and I've mostly made peace with that. What I do know is that I'm done organizing my own worth around whether my parents notice me the way they notice her. That question used to run underneath everything I did growing up. Every grade, every accomplishment, every quiet hope that this time it might finally register. It doesn't anymore. Somewhere between that kitchen doorway and that gift box, I stopped waiting for it to.